Welcome to the Center for Universal Oneness. We are an open, welcoming, spiritual community that supports all faith traditions and invites you to join us on your spiritual journey. We host different speakers each week to guide and inspire us. We are guided by universal principles of acceptance of all that is sacred, and we strive to live in the oneness of love. Please enjoy this presentation.
Thank you. It's good that she always says that. We'd never know otherwise. And let's see, we're going to introduce Cheri, who is most everybody on CFU knows Cheri from working with her husband, Ben, who joins us quite a bit and who is a spectator today, which I think is great. And Cheri, as you probably know already, is classically trained opera singer, performed 7 years with a Long Beach Opera, and spiritual psychology, a master's degree. And she is also working as manager at Unity World Headquarters for the Outreach Program. I think she'll talk a little bit about that. So Cheri, it is a magnificent pleasure to welcome you back to Center for Universal Oneness. And take it away.
And I believe you are joining us from Florida, correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
So thank you all. Thank you, Center for Universal Oneness, for inviting me to speak. It is a pleasure to do something new. Most of you know me as a singer, and I've kind of become an unexpected speaker in the last few months. And part of that has to do with the Unity booklet called Peaceful Passing, which I was in charge of project managing and helping to bring forth into existence along with the Unity team. And we had just started that booklet process when I unexpectedly got a call from my stepmother saying that my father was ill, and she didn't know exactly what was going on, but she asked me to come out to Los Angeles to help. And it ended up being an end-of-life trip, unexpectedly. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, great. So I understand that dying and death and grieving is not a very comfortable topic, and something that is often shrouded in a lot of anxiety and avoidance. And so I invite you to get a cup of tea, to settle down in a comfy chair. That, I believe that uncomfortable conversations should happen in as much comfort as possible. So today my intention is really just to have this be a conversation, to have it be something where I can share a little bit into my world and what my experience was like going through being part of the inner circle of my father when he was in transition, and also to share some of the resources and ideas that I wish I had known about when I went into that situation. Things that would have avoided a lot of unnecessary suffering, and that I think could really add a lot of benefit to your lives, to your family's lives and experience. And the core thing that I want you to take away from this talk, from here on out, if you can't watch the rest of it, here's the core thing I want you to take away, is that by thinking about your own end of life and doing your end of life paperwork is a radical act of love for you and for your family members or friends. So that is the core takeaway. The rest of it is just gravy, and I hope it's something that's inspiring and introspective. And if you feel triggered, if you feel emotional, I just invite you to stick with me on this for these, 25 minutes. It'll be good. So, to set a little context, I know that Western society, anyway, is quite death, dying, and grief averse. We don't like to talk about it. It's often shrouded in mystery, or it's something that is viewed as a failure, because we have this medical model, and that when someone is close to the end of their life, or they have a disease that's terminal, and they go, hospice is called. A lot of times there's a misunderstanding that this is like giving up, that like there's some sort of failure, that you didn't fight hard enough, or the doctors didn't do enough. And so I want to clear this misunderstanding, because there is, because the end of life can be very beautiful and very sacred. And I think that this misunderstanding is something that prevents people from contacting hospice earlier than they would have otherwise. And hospice can be a beautiful team, part of your team, your end of life team. And and we talk about that a lot in the booklet, Peaceful Passing, Practical and Spiritual Reminders for the End of Life, which is the Unity booklet that I helped put together. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and hopefully this works. Share. Do you see that? Okay. All right. So this is the booklet, Peaceful Passing, and you'll find so you can download and or request hard copies of this booklet from the Unity website at the URL unity.org/peaceful-passing/booklet, or you can link from the resources page, which is unity.org/peaceful-passing. And this was a booklet that we at the outreach team put together because we had done a booklet on spiritual support for caregiving, and we also put together a booklet on grief as a spiritual practice. And we felt like this topic really rounded out that trilogy of time of the topics. And so we offer them now as an end-of-life spiritual support booklet series. All that to say is that there are so many resources out there. So what I want to talk about is, because this is such an uncomfortable topic for some people, I've been on a number of podcasts talking about this booklet in the last several months. And it's funny because often when people are uncomfortable, they'll switch the topic to be like, oh, what do you believe about the afterlife? What do you think about this religion or that religion, or what happens? And I was like, but we're here to talk about this period, this time where we're in the body, but on our way to dropping it if it is a natural death. So one of the resources that I found so helpful in this process with my father was Barbara Carnes, who is a nurse and hospice worker who has revolutionized the hospice industry. And she's a deaf educator. And her booklet, her end of life series, was like my saving grace as I was going through this with my dad. And she says that you're, in a way, dying is a misnomer because you're alive or you're not. And the point of death, it could either be sudden, or if it's not, if it's a sort of an underlying disease that is bringing us out of the body, then there's a a process, a natural process that the body goes through, and that she has documented over her many, many years. And so it's, a lot of you have probably heard of it or seen it. It's a little blue booklet, Gone From My Sight. And this is a booklet that outlines the signs of the body shutting down. And it's something that it's helpful to know, and also alleviates some fear. And because a lot of I think the fear around the unknown, especially around dying and death, is that we don't know, we can't ask people what happened. I mean, I know there's near-death experiences out there, and we can certainly gather what we can from that. And this is a common experience. This is something that every single one of us is going to go through at some point or another. And I think having the information and talking about it is actually a way for us to lessen that fear. And what I learned through this process of writing an article in this booklet for Unity, and also the subsequent conversations and trying to promote this booklet, is that there is something actually called the death positive movement. It's sort of like the sex positive movement, but it's for death and dying, where we just invite conversation about it, to safe environments where you can ask any questions that you might want, or just talk about it. And the more exposure you have to this topic, the less fearful it becomes. And that is part of my intention. It's like, I invite you to check out things like death cafes, where you jump on a Zoom call like this with tea and a cake, and people just talk about death, talk about questions, talk about, well, what can you expect, and what does this look like? So also I wanted to share that the inner circle is, how I define it, is like that closest, those people closest to the person who is in transition. This could be a spouse, this could be close friends, this could be children, young or adult children, and caregivers. The hospice team is sort of, if you think about like concentric circles, you've got the person who is in transition, you have their inner circle, because the people they trust the most, who are probably part of the family, and then there's the medical team and the hospice team. And so I learned so much being part of my father's inner circle, and it was truly one of the most difficult things I've ever gone through in my life thus far. It stretched me on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, having to co-caregive, having to advocate, having to deal with my own anticipatory grief, handling other people's grief, and at the same time protecting and holding the safe space for my father and my stepmom. And so one of the things I want to share is that my dad did not have any paperwork in place. And so we were in the heat of the moment, and we had to even though we were all like heartbroken at this point in time, we had to sit down and be like, okay, here's the advance directive and for your healthcare. Like, what do you want? And these are not the kinds of questions you wanted to be asking him when he was not feeling well, and that we knew that this was a terminal diagnosis that he had. So again, my core message is that doing your end of life paperwork ahead of time, before you're in the heat of that moment, is such an act of love. It's something that ensures that you have what you want and that your family members and or friends know how you want to be treated and what your wishes are. And then you can read my article in the booklet, but it was really about the spiritual learning of letting go of what I wanted in that moment and making room for what my dad wanted. And he was not a religious or spiritual person. And so a lot of the things that I did to help support him were internal. I was there physically. I was helping care for his body. I was helping to coordinate a lot of details. I'm a very organized, detail-oriented person, and so I, showed up that way. But it was, it was a moment I had to check myself. I had to check my own desires and controlling of the situation versus what did he want and how can I make that wish a reality. So I want to play for you right now a short video by Barbara Carnes, the hospice nurse that I mentioned, because in it she describes new rules for the end of life. And I think it really paints a picture and shares some really good information about what is possible during this sacred section of life. So just a moment, I'll share my screen.
Dying is not a medical event. Dying is a social, communal event. And when we're at the bedside of someone who's dying, it is all about the community, about the togetherness, not about the medical stuff that's going on. But families don't know that. There are new rules for end-of-life care. Taking care of someone in the last months of their life is not like taking care of someone who's going to get better. But most people don't know this. And so my job is to help families understand the new rules. The normal, natural way that a person dies has a process. And that process involves three things: eating, sleeping, and withdrawing from the world around them. The hardest thing for me to get people to understand is that when a person has entered the dying process, it's okay not to eat. Food is what holds us in our body. Food is the anchor that holds us, that gives us grounding. And if the body's preparing to die, it doesn't want the food or the grounding. It's trying to let go. Dying is not painful. Dying does not cause pain. Disease causes pain. So you're going to look at a person's disease history to understand. And we watchers of the dying process are identifying it as it looks painful. Dying itself is not. The person's so removed from their physical body that they don't experience it in the same way that we who have a firm grip on this planet feel it. If pain has been a part of the disease process, and there's a lot of disease out there that has pain, then you are going to treat that pain until the person's last breath. There is no reason today for any person to die in pain. And if someone says to me, we've done everything we can and this person is still in pain, then my answer is, you have not done everything. What we want to give to that person who's leaving us is our presence, is our love, our care, and our concern. And it isn't necessarily the words that we say. It's our being there. The person who's dying, they're reaching a point where words really don't mean anything. It's that you're there. It's the touch, the holding. It's okay to get in bed with your loved one. It's okay to have the dog on the bed. It is that communal companionship, that presence that means more than anything else in the days to hours to even months before death.
So I hope that information and those visuals have sort of opened your mind a little bit more about what's possible. And I want to share another inspiring thing about someone else's vision for how they would like to die, that they have actually listed as part of their end of life care on the 5 wishes. This is sort of like an addendum that they added to it. And when I read it, I thought it was so incredibly beautiful. And it just really opened my mind to the concept that this it's almost like planning a wedding or planning a birthday party. You know, it could be something beautiful and fun and meaningful and really comforting to both the person who is in transition and their family. So let me pull that up real quick. Hold on just a minute. Here we go. Okay. So one of the, so this was created by a woman named Arlene Steputat. I actually know her personally. And it was, she's in a profession, she's worked in hospice, but she's what's known as a death doula. And death doulas are non-medical professionals who work with family members and people who are in their final days, sort of like how a doula would help a woman who's birthing. These death doulas are people who work with the person who is transitioning and their family. So she created this called As I Lay Dying. As I lay dying, please do not hide the truth from me. I will know, even when I cannot communicate verbally, that I am dying. Please come to my bedside, present with what is true for you. Do not pretend. You can cry, be angry, laugh, tell stories, and remember. Being present, please only use a cell phone in a rare circumstance, and only one person can have a phone in the room. Leave the room to handle anything that is pulling on you. However, a designated phone for calls for me or a laptop to see a beloved is fine. Share photos or music or a video of our conversations is also acceptable. So you can see how clearly she's outlining her wishes. Be on purpose with devices to support me and not distract you. Please be at peace with others who may also be at my bedside. If necessary, ask to sit with me alone to complete anything unsaid. As I lay dying, I want my room to reverberate with beauty and loving. Please have some flowers in my room. Please play soft music at times. Contact the threshold choir to come sing for me. And this is something that's in her local area. Live music and song is welcome. Have a small fountain bubbling near my bedside. Play our song of love with the On-I-Hugh chant, especially in the evenings and overnight. And those are specific songs and tracks based on her spiritual practice. Set up global circle of light as appropriate, as well as a circle with ministers in my area if possible. And again, this is specific to her spiritual practice. Please be aware that despite appearances, I can hear you. So please make your conversations purposeful and remember to include me. Tell me who you are when you arrive and say goodbye when you are leaving. I can always feel your touch. Hold my hand, stroke my hair, kiss my face, show your love. Read me the 23rd Psalm and anoint my head, the crown chakra, my forehead, third eye, and my heart. Tell me it is okay for me to leave. I welcome children and animals. These innocents bring the unconditional loving and joy of the sacred time. Do not be alarmed by my body's process as it separates from my soul. Read about how the body changes so you will not be alarmed. Keep me as comfortable and free from pain as possible. Adorn my bed with scarves and flower petals as I get close to leaving. Use a doula to help guide you. If I take my last breath and no one is at my bedside, be at peace. My death will evolve as it should. If you are with me, realize I am on my final journey. All is forgiven. Forgive me. Thank you. I love you. God bless you. Peace, be still. And when I leave my body, please stay with it a while. Wash my hands and face. Please anoint my body as you say the body blessing. And this is a specific prayer that she has also with these instructions. And she says, I am free, I am home. So as you can see, like her wishes really paint a picture of how she wants her final hours and days to be. And I found that so incredibly beautiful and inspiring because admittedly, I just didn't have the exposure really or the education prior to this loss that I had, that it could be different. So I want you to take some time. We can talk about it in the discussion after this talk, or I invite you to contact your loved ones or close friend or within your spiritual community to have deeper conversations. Because I know this, just being in the circle of someone who has either recently passed or who's in the process of passing can really bring up a lot inside of us. It triggers our own fears, it triggers just our own sense of mortality, of redefining our priorities in life, thinking about how do we want to be remembered. And I encourage you to think about, who would you choose to be part of your inner circle? Who do you trust? And how can you best prepare them to give you the experience that you want in those final days and hours? Who do you want around? Who do you not want around? Plan your vigil. Think of it like a wedding or a birth. Have your end of life paperwork in place. And now you have the opportunity at this point in time, before you get into the heat of the moment, to really think about and do the spiritual work that a lot of people don't do before the heat of the moment, which is, what unfinished business do I have? What do I need to forgive? And for the time that you have left on this earth, what are your priorities? And how do you want to show up? And for those of you who, it's going to be unique for everyone. Sometimes it's really important for people to feel like they've left a legacy, whether that's writing letters to their loved ones, or writing a book, or creating videos for people to watch after you're gone. It's just a really rich opportunity that I invite you to explore. And there's so many resources online that are beautiful, that are thoughtful, that are fun, even some card games on how to have these conversations. And it can also be really simple.
Cheri, what a wonderful talk. Oh my gosh. I can't think of a time when I've ever been a part of a talk where they were sharing thoughts and resources about passing. That's just taboo. It just doesn't happen. So I personally applaud your courage for taking that on. And I also know, at least I think I know, that a lot of us in the gallery here were really touched because we either have loved ones who have passed recently or who are ill currently. In my case, my mother is 100, and it's imminent. I mean, it's imminent for all of us. So there's tenderness about that. There's a lot of good information about that. It takes the dread out of it. It becomes one of those things that when people start to talk about passing, the first thing we want to say is, I don't want to talk about that now. At least we do that in our house. So it removes the cloak and dagger from it.
That's right. That's right.
should
And
hear
hey,
kids
it's
laughing at this
Halloween
thing.
time too. So,
Yeah.
we've got the skeletons out on the lawn, and
Yeah. Yeah, the Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead
That's
is
right.
great. Celebrate.
You should have heard Jeff laughing at that last song. He loves dark humor, and he was just clapping and laughing, and I thought, oh, brother.
Yeah, it's fun, and truly, there's so many resources online. There are a number of free events coming up that, if you're interested in having more safe spaces to talk about death and dying, there's a free event online coming up November 12th through the 14th called the Beautiful Dying Expo.
Wow.
And so beautifuldyingexpo.com. It's completely free. There will be death doulas, there will be advanced care lawyers and doctors, and Patch Adams is going to be one of the main speakers.
Wow.
I highly encourage it. Unity will have a virtual booth there talking about these three booklets that we're offering for end of life. And there's also a deathcafe.com is another great resource. Have these casual conversations about dying and death. And so they're all over the country, either in person or most of them virtually right now. But it's been a movement for many years. And there's one that I recommend, which is being offered through a couple of Unity ministers who are close friends with Barbara Carnes, the nurse and educator that you saw in the video. And she's literally there online with you live during this Death Cafe. So the next one that's happening for them is coming up November 20th. And I will see if I can get onto my screen. Yes, so that Death Cafe you can find via eventbrite.com. Search for Virtual Death Cafe, or I think the organization is Transform Myself. Transform Myself. So if you search for either of those, eventbrite.com, Virtual Death Cafe, or Transform Myself, that will probably bring it up. And again, I invite you, Peaceful Passing. I have an article in there that goes into much more detail about my own experience with my father and at his end of life. And I'm really grateful. And I just want to say a quick thank you, special thank you to my mom, who is online here now, Nancy Williamson. She was a dear support to me as I went through that in so many ways. So thank you. And also to my husband, Ben. I love you. And I'm so grateful to be here with you. Thank you. I'll stay on for the conversation. And shall we move into a quick meditation?
Sure.
All right. So I invite you all to close your eyes. I invite you to attune to that place inside of you that is connected with all of life, that is connected with each person in this Zoom room here, in all of our separate locations, and we place a blessing of peace, a blessing of light, and a blessing of courage as we explore this topic together, as we step forward into that life that we are, and knowing that when our body drops away, what is left is that life that we are, moving on in a different form. We attune to the peace that is present always, that is always available to us in any circumstance, in any moment, that we can just take in a breath and really feel right here and right now how alive we are. We are alive now, and that is a gift. That is such a gift. And even as we think about and talk about that period of time in which we will shed this mortal body, we know and we trust in our hearts that the essence of who we are lives on, not only in spirit, but within our families' hearts, within our memories, within all of the ways that we have served and touched other people's lives. And so we show up today and every day that we have breath with that sense of purpose, with that sense of loving, with that sense of service. And we know we will make the absolute best of the time we have on this planet to make it a better place. And so it is. Amen.